Heikigan Roku, case 15. It's the Blue Cliff record, case 15. Introduction or instruction. A sword that kills, a sword that gives life. This is the traditional principle of old. It is essential for the present. But tell me, right now, what is the killing sword? What is the life-giving sword? Once we have grasped, received, imbibed the basics of practice instructions, of clarifying what and how practices, our individual practice. The point of exploring practice cases, such as these in this Blue Cliff record collection or in other collections, the point of talks is not to give more information. It is to illustrate an opportunity to clarify the nature of ongoing practice and to illustrate how, where we might get entangled or sidetracked. Most of all, it is to directly offer the Buddha way, the Buddha teaching. So, the sword that kills, or the sword that kills, the sword that gives life, the standard of ancient times, essential for the present. But tell me right now, what is the killing sword? What is the life-giving sword? Traditionally, the phrase, a sword that kills, is a sword that cuts off delusion. All delusions and awakening, or if we use the word enlightenment, naturally springs up. Then the sword that kills is at the very same time revealed as the sword that gives life. If we think of them as two different, sometimes one, sometimes the other, as the text sometimes might lead us to misunderstand, then we get into trouble. We create trouble. See? Whatever this so-called awakening can show, whatever we call it, it doesn't occur because we chase after it, no matter how hard, how much, because it's never something else. The more you run after something, the further it goes from you. But if we remain who, where, what we are, remain still, there it is, right in front of us. Otherwise, we never grasp whatever we look at for, because we run after it. Hakuin has a nice comment. The sword that kills, appearing in a flash, it cannot be separated. This thing is all over the place. Tenkei, who I mentioned before, yesterday, says, wielding this freely is the standard of ancient time and is essential. What sort of methods are referred to in this way, he asks. it's valuable for us to see and understand what our practice is and to clarify practice instructions. Otherwise, our usual way of thinking, self and other, one thing, another thing, breaking up the universe into these categories and ideas, continues to lead us to misperceive the reality. When we say, for instance, notice thought, be experiencing, it's as if it's two different things, or label thought. There's this thing called labeling thought, and this thing called experiencing, and thought and experiencing are two different things. The only reason they're different is because we believe and treat our life in that way. We break our life up into things called thoughts, things called experience. So throughout Buddhist practice in various forms, it's to allow us to, if I use the word heal what's never been unhealed, but heal these splits, these dichotomies and trichotomies that we create in life, which cause us to miss this very life that we are. And you see it in all sorts of Buddhist traditions, whether it's in the some of the Vipassana tradition, where you label thought, and then you start labeling the arising of thought and the passing of thought. Labeling thought in that way, or noting thought, noting arising as you become more skilled, noting the passing, so that you can open up to being and seeing who and what you always are. So when I say label thought, or what Joko says, notice thought, she's encouraging us to notice where we are entangled, where we are caught in self-centered dream. Caught is so that we can see what we're doing to separate ourselves, to remove ourselves, from our life, from this experiencing thought, emotions, all sorts of arising, passing. These are just categories we create to fool ourselves, to perpetuate suffering and harming. Attachment is perpetuated because from the beginning it's not so, except that we misperceive, misconstrue what our life is. And in this misconstruction, we do destruction. We destruct our life. We distract ourselves and destruct ourselves. We destruct who and what we are. So these phrases, a sword that kills, is killing our usual self-centered way of being in the world, killing our usual self and other justifications for all sorts of harming and suffering, all sorts of entanglements, all sorts of holding, which are artificial constructs, but we are so habituated in them that we don't notice them and therefore miss who we always are. See? Miss who we always are. So if we can, if I use the expression, cut that delusion by noticing it, by labeling it, the experiencing or the awakening, natural naturally arises, naturally is there. Our life, the sword that cuts, is the sword that gives life at the very same time. Strange as it is to our usual thinking of either or our usual dichotomous way of functioning in the world. The sword that kills is naturally present if and how we do our practice. Forget ourselves into our practice. Forget the thoughts that we hold on to. Then, naturally, this is the life of the universe, who and what we are. Okay, the main case. A practitioner asked Yunmen, what is it when it is not an activity of mind at this moment, nor is it a thing at this moment? Yunmen said, a preaching into reverse. That's one traditional translation. Maizumi Roshi recommended right back at you. Yunmen says, right back at you. See, Yunmen turns a very intent, an effort back to cut what? This questioner, if it's a monk probably, actually they know who, well, I shouldn't say they know who he is. Commentators say he is a such and such person, and it's the same person who questioned in the previous case, and someone who eventually accomplished, but at this point was still stuck when he asks this question. So he says, it's not a thing, and it's not a mental construct. What is it? Or sometimes this is taken in a different way. Sometimes it's taken, it's not a thing, and it's, what should I say? I don't want to say it too much, but it's not something that you could see, so it's in a sense, it's mind, and sometimes it's not an object, not a thing, so it's something like, oh, this is some sort of Buddha nature or essential nature. Even though he doesn't use that phrase, he's insinuating this. He's someone who actually has some insight, the questioner, but he's also, this is a trap question. It's a trap. It's not a genuine question because he's really got a secret agenda in his questioning. Because obviously, he can't be given anything. So, preaching in reverse, so preaching right back at you, or just right back at you. Right there it is. Right there it is. It doesn't buy into the questioner's trap. The questioner's attempt to say, is it this or is it that? Is it a world of awakening, or is it a world of phenomena, or a world of beyond awakening and phenomena? All sorts of ways we try to create categories and ideas, and then ask questions about it in order to start thinking more and drawing conclusions. The question is questioning as if he's grasped this world of awakening, and yet he wants to say he's gone beyond it, or don't have to think about those things. It's Yunmen's right away response to him. Upside down, topsy-turvy, backwards. Statement in reverse. But it's just a statement in reverse, just right back at you. It's a challenge and a push to that question. In a way, when we notice thought, that's just that. That's turning that thought around, turning that holding to thought, that caught in beliefs around, to enable us to right away be this experiencing we always are, instead of some thinking about it and conclusions about it and beliefs that we want to then say, if this, then that. No. Just right back at you. And if you try to make something of this right back at you, then already we're in trouble. Because again, we're going to these habits of dichotomizing, of entangling in self-centeredness, in self and otherness, in a world other than right here, right here. We're preaching into reverse, if we use that translation. As I said, there's different ways of translating the original Chinese, and when we translate it in different ways, there's different flavors, and it's useful to see the different flavors. Another translation says an upside down statement. Yunmen's response is upside down statement. That's the opportunity. Upside down. Once we start thinking, what do you mean upside down? What do you mean right back at me? Once we start doing that, then we don't see. We don't see who and what we are. There's a comment made about this by Tenke. He says, this is Yunmen's method, mounting a bandit's horse to chase the bandit down. In other words, the bandit is the questioner who's trying to trick him, and he's taking that to turn it around, breaking through, if we say, his simplistic ideas about awakening, about emptiness, all sorts of things, not emptiness, not awakening. But no need to try to parse out the words. It's the action and response. Just like when we notice or label thought, there's no need or point of parsing out what kind of thought is this, and where did it go, and where did it come from, and what am I going to do with it? And what does it mean? Oh, I feel it this way, and this keeps coming up, and keeping track of these things. No, it's experiencing doesn't need to be divided up, broken up. Otherwise, we miss our very life. The last two lines of the verse on this give us a nice flavor. This is by Shwedo, who is the compiler of the Blue Cliff record, so he has the case, sometimes introduction or instruction in the beginning, and a verse at the end. I'll read the whole verse, but I just want to say something about the end to the last two lines. A preaching into reverse, dividing a tally, dying and living together. I'll resolve it for your sake. 84,000 were not phoenix feathers. 33 persons went into the tiger's den. Remarkable, remarkable, rushing, lapping, the moon in the water. Rushing, lapping, the moon, another way of saying it, the moon in churning, rushing water. Always moon in churning, rushing water. If you try to grab the moon in the churning, rushing water, it won't work. Then it becomes some conceptual and intellectual thing. It becomes something that you are adding on. Our practice is never to add on more ideas and more knowledge and more insights and more awakenings and more. That's, again, caught and holding to all sorts of self-centeredness that I have self-centeredness. I don't have self-centeredness, that I could get things right here, right now. Churning water moon, great. Be that. This experiencing moment. Right here. The whole universe. Right back at you. Thank you.